Well, Fastamai, good afternoon. Welcome to the first Mannin Line of 2025. Happy New Year. Hope you've had a good festive time. It's Beth looking after things while Andy's on holiday for a couple of weeks. Chris is on the phones. We would love to hear from you over the next hour about anything at all that might be on your mind. How would you like to see 2025 pan out for the Isle of Man? Is there something that's on your wish list? Or perhaps you might be thinking closer to home. We've been hearing today from a Douglas resident hoping something will finally be done about parking in the city centre. Or perhaps there's something else entirely you'd like to talk about. Whatever it is, you're most welcome. 66 13 68 is the number. You can text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. Let's think about that parking situation first of all. This was on breakfast this morning. So just picture the scene. You've had a long day at work, you're exhausted, you just want to get home, crash out on the sofa. But before you can do that, you have to drive round and round in circles for a place to park, finally settling on somewhere, maybe a 10 or more likely 15-minute walk away. Well, that apparently is the reality for many residents in central Douglas, and we'll hear a little bit more about that in the moment. But I'm delighted to say we can go straight to the lines first of all and join Wilf. Happy New Year, Wilf. How are you?
Happy New Year. Now I'm going to wish everybody on the island a Happy New Year and a healthy one. That's the main thing.
Absolutely is. A lovely sentiment there. I believe you've seen something.
Yes. It was just before Christmas, day or two before Christmas. I was having to run on the Derby Coast Road from Bride End. And just before hitting the camp, Derby camp, a couple of fields on the right, but there was a car tight behind me, so I couldn't stop. I seen a hawk lift out of the field. It was a big hawk, sort of, I don't know, it might have been one of the bigger ones. I can't think of the name of them now. But anyway, but the main thing with it was, I was just wondering if anybody else had seen it, because it was all pure white, completely white.
Definitely wasn't a seagull, Wilf.
Definitely not a seagull.
Just checking.
I've been around seagulls all my life, living in Ramsey, so I know a seagull. No, definitely a hawk, and it was all pure white.
How amazing. What a shame you couldn't stop and get a picture.
Just curious to see at anybody else. Well, somebody must have seen it living out Derby or around that area. It must where it derived from, I haven't a clue.
Well,
or whether it's one of the, what do you call it when they're all white? I can't remember now.
Like an albino one, yeah.
That's the one, yeah. I wasn't close enough to see if it had red eyes or not.
Oh, well, Wilf, as you say, I mean, it sounds very distinctive, so perhaps somebody else has spotted it, maybe even got a photograph or can tell us a little bit more. That'd be great.
That's it. I couldn't stop because there was a car tight behind me and sort of itching to get past, and I only caught by looking to the right. I seen this thing, and then I noticed in the mirror, I seen the car behind me, and I thought, can't pull up. I got to keep going, so... I didn't turn around and come back, which I possibly should have done.
Oh, we'll do that next time.
It was going up out of the field when I seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Garth has suggested it sounds a little bit like an osprey, maybe. Could it have been an osprey?
I don't know. We got ospreys here. I don't know.
I don't know. No, we need a bird expert. So if there's a bird expert listening who can solve the mystery.
An osprey is not white. It's only partly white.
Okay.
I don't know any hawks that's white.
Big
Unless,
Alice.
as you say, it might have been one of these, ones with the red eyes. I don't know.
Yeah, well, Big Al has suggested that maybe it was a white hen harrier. Somebody else thinks maybe
possibly,
it was
but the female hen harrier, I believe, is bigger than the male, and it's got a lot of white on it. But this was completely white.
Okay,
we've got certainly as big as a hen harrier. Certainly as big as that.
We've got a couple of other suggestions here. One from texter ending 544 who says maybe it was a snowy owl. But John has been in touch.
An owl. Well, it definitely wasn't an owl.
Well, John says it's I hope I'm pronouncing this right, a leucistic hen harrier that hatched out from Scard. She has spent much of her time up there since a fledgling.
Could be then. Somebody else seen it or something.
There you go.
I don't know.
Yeah, actually a couple of people also getting in touch saying a leucistic hen harrier. So if we can get a photograph of this, that would be amazing. But what a lovely...
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. I think we have a photo. Somebody's just sent a photograph in, which I will share after the programme has finished. I can't actually see that yet. But if, we get that photograph, I can post that on social media. Oh, what a lovely spot though, Wilf.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to talk to you.
All right.
Take care. So that was Wilf there with what we think is a leucistic hen harrier. Apparently, Paul's just been in touch to say it's very well known to Isle of Man twitchers. So how amazing. Let's go back to the lines and we can join Howard now. Good afternoon, Howard. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Beth. And thank you. Good morning. Or good afternoon, as it is now. Just listening to the news of that lady that's brought the petition up. It's opening a can of worms, because if she wants parking just for the residents around there, they're going to have to change legislation, because as far as I'm aware, and I can be corrected on this, that would then have to be private parking on public roads. And the only way you do that, in a sense, is if you have a reserved spot. And that's generally somebody that has disabilities or otherwise. So what they would ask is, these people who are wanting private parking, and it's outside of their housing area, will they be charged rates on it, as it then becomes part of their house? And will they have to maintain the roadway? There's a myriad of questions to ask, because that is a public highway paid for by the taxpayers. And she's saying, going to have to walk 10 minutes to get my car. Well, but we all have to walk to get our cars, and unless you go into a car park, and there you will have to pay. And the same thing should be here. If they want private parking outside the house, then they should have to pay. And if they got like the Chester Street car park, I don't know what it is today, but it was a fairly substantial charge, and it gave you 5 days a week. Still does in Chester Street car, 5 days a week where you are guaranteed a park, and it's a numbered park. But that is in a building, not on a public highway. So this lady, as far as I'm aware or concerned, she should not be able to ask for a private area outside her own homes, so she has the comforts of being able to just jump out of her car and go home and lie on the couch.
I think possibly we've put the words in her mouth there about going home to lie on the couch there, Howard.
Yeah,
but
I appreciate that, but that's what people will be thinking.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, when you buy somewhere that's like your little area of land, is it that unrealistic to be able to expect to be able to park nearby? But then on the other hand, if you've bought somewhere where you know that parking is a little bit of an issue, then maybe that's on you.
Well, everybody has that problem. Not just, if you've got the only thing that can prevent that is if there's a drop curb. You are not allowed to park in front of a drop curb. So that's automatically giving you access to your driveway. And it is a thing that the police can ask you first and then order you to move your car if it's on a drop curb. And this is the law. But the rest of the roadway is a public highway, and it has been adopted by the DOI for many, many years, and it is not a private parking area. So what she's asking for is a free gift of land to everybody that lives there, and which is wrong, because that then flies against all of the roads on the island anywhere, not just Douglas. You could say, I want it outside my house if you live in the middle of the country somewhere. And as I say, the only way I've seen this done, and you see the applications, and there are applications in the papers for a parking area outside your house if you have a disability, a reserved parking area. So I think she's got a cheek asking for her own private parking area. A lot of people here on the island, older people like myself, will remember the Marchioness of Queensberry. and she lived out on the northwest coast, and she blocked off a public footpath. She said, "It is my land," and she was stopping people walking down the footpath onto the beach. Well, she got short shift there, and I think the same thing should happen to this lady. She has no preferential treatment on the public highway unless she has a disability.
All right, Howard. Well, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. Great to talk to you as ever. Have a good afternoon.
And you, take
care.
Thanks, Beth.
That was Howard there talking about parking around the Westmoreland Road area. Some pretty strong thoughts there. We can join Stephen now, who also wants to talk about this. Good afternoon, Stephen.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, listeners. Some points I would like to make people aware of, probably been forgotten because it was discussed in the early days of the planning application. We all supported, I must declare I am a resident of this area, we all supported the renovation and conversion to back to flats of the old nurses' home because we all thought that was a very good use of the building, bringing it back into use. It didn't have enough parking, but it was a good way forward for the building, and everybody accepted that. There was a plan within it to use the existing car park to the right. That would be used for the residents of the home of the building in the evening time, and it would continue to be used for those who visited the community health centres in the daytime. Now, with this new plan, what has happened is that those facilities are no longer available. Now, I must say, I am completely against this idea of saying that the residents should not have parking permits. Sorry, if you're a resident of the area, of course, it's going to be very difficult to say that people who live in the area shouldn't own a car, and that's perfectly legitimate in my view. But what I do think is that when this development site was first proposed in the strategic plan, there was 37 odd dwellings within it, and that would have been perfectly acceptable. What's happened now is MDC have come along in the guise of government, and they have produced an over-intensive plan for the site. They are asking not to be complied with for the number of parking spaces that would be required in a new development. And I think this is the nub of the matter. In a new development, you should comply with the strategic plan and provide the number of car parking spaces within it, like any other developer would have to. Now, on this particular occasion, they're asking for a commuted sum for open space as well, and we haven't had that come through yet, what that is going to be. So there's a number of issues that also we can draw extra out of this, and that is the area will still have a commercial area on the south side of this development, and in all the other parts of the area outside it. There is dentists, there is garages, there is shops on Bucks Road and Prospect Terrace, where people should be perfectly entitled to come along and park to go about their normal business and support these businesses. If a plan of this type was introduced, it would have a negative effect on them as well. The best thing that could happen to this site would be either to continue with the original strategic plan, which was approved by Tynwald, which allowed that number of dwellings, or the site should be a new school, or in any plan comply with a number of parking spaces that has been approved by Tynwald. So that's my view of the whole problem over this particular issue.
And Stephen, you said you are a resident of the area. Is parking an issue for you personally?
It's not an issue in the daytime because people travel off to work. So if you introduced a scheme of this or a regulation of this type for those people who live in this proposed development, then there's no regulations that apply at night in any case. So it would be a free for all. I don't like to use the word free for all. It would be people could park legitimately wherever they can find it. But if you don't come home by 5 o'clock, in this area, then it is the devil's own to find us a parking space, and it would be exacerbated by this plan. I keep on saying Tynwald makes plans, and they're good plans, and they take care of these issues. But then what happens is government itself ignores the plans that Tynwald approves, and that is the big problem in this area. It's not the fact of people being selfish. It's Tynwald has passed plans that cover these problems, and then government itself comes along and wants to ignore them. Now, is that fair?
All right, Stephen, some great points there. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to get in touch. That was Stephen talking about the Westmoreland Road parking issue. Let's go to line 3 and join Donna now. Good afternoon, Donna.
Hi, Beth. How are you?
I'm
Happy
good.
New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
What it was, it's basically the airport, Beth. I've got a daughter who's a uni student, and she uses the Gatwick route a lot. And she travelled back for Christmas, Friday the 13th of December. The flight from Gatwick couldn't leave because air traffic control were on a break here. So I was tracking it on the EasyJet tracker, left in plenty of time to get her at the airport, and lo and behold, it was an extra 30 minutes late landing, basically because they were circling up above Isle of Man, because air traffic control was on another break. I know they're short-staffed. Saturday, she went back to go back to her uni, and everything was going fine. It had a 6-minute delay on the flight back to Gatwick. And she messaged me. We thought she'd taken off. It was a 10 flight on Saturday morning. Turned out the security scanner broke, which, fair enough, these things happened. And then they couldn't take off because there was one man loading the suitcases, the baggage on. It was a full flight. And the EasyJet pilot told them, they said, look, we've been told to put air traffic control. If we don't get the baggage on, we're basically going to have the runway shut on us. And it happened. They closed the runway down due to basically not enough ground staff. I just don't understand. I mean, she got in at 11:37, so you're talking about an hour and a half later. You know, she had trains to catch and everything to get back to uni, and I just don't understand how they can't speak to each other and maybe not have air traffic control breaks when they're trying to load aeroplanes with one member of staff. And it just seems to be EasyJet seems to get the flack for this, when in fact it seems to be the organisation with the airport personally. I feel is the problem. Air traffic control breaks, not enough ground control staff.
And obviously, Donna, we don't know the reasons for that. The time of year, there might be staff sickness, so we don't know the reason for that. Yeah. Interestingly, I mean, I was away over Christmas and flew from Liverpool, and actually was delayed on the way out and in because of air traffic control in Liverpool, which did make me think, well, you know, it's not just the Isle of Man. There are very strict. Yeah.
No. It's difficult. I mean, I know they want to, encourage an extra 15,000 people here, but to me, they really need to sort out the airport. That's not the only time, with hiccups with our travelling forwards and backwards. But I think an hour and a half on Saturday was just, the weather was fine, everything was fine. It was basically down to, and end up one member of staff trying to load the baggage onto a plane, which I think is shocking.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it?
It could be sickness.
Yeah, we'll ask a question, Donna, and see if there was a specific issue. I know we have spoken about ATC issues before. The airport have been very open about the procedures and whatever that are in place for air traffic control. It's obviously a lot busier now down at Ronsway than it used to be years ago. But it is difficult, isn't it? When you're on the flight and just want to go and you've got a big journey ahead of you, it's frustrating. She got there okay in the end, did she?
She got there eventually. Thankfully, she went Saturday and not Sunday because, obviously she would have had more of a problem on Sunday. But yeah, she got there eventually. She's got back to her university fine on Saturday. But obviously it was just, we were up early to take her to the airport as well. And, then it all just sort of went pear-shaped basically. Yeah. And just one other quick thing, hospital parking, why can't they introduce a disc zone? Palatine do it for 30 minutes. Why can't they just nobles go to like a 2-hour disc zone, and if your appointment runs over, you get a little pass or something from the hospital to stick in your car, and maybe then people could actually get a parking space. I just don't know why they won't do it, but...
Okay, Donna, good suggestion.
Check it.
Yeah, again, that's another question we can ask. Lovely. Thank you so much for calling.
Okay, not
Take
a problem.
Care.
Thank you. Bye.
That was Donna there, just talking about some issues she experienced with her daughter trying to get home from the airport. But as I say, we travelled, as I mentioned, from Liverpool, and there were ATC delays there, both on the way out and in. Just before we take a very short break, I just wanted to play this to you, because we had a text in from Steve who said, the weather guys bring a smile, or should I say a grimace, to my face. They are so far off the mark, must be weeks. The BBC forecast that covers the Isle of Man is far more accurate. Now, this might have come up because over the weekend people might have been expecting snow, and it was something that Ben mentioned to Neil Young from the Met Office when he spoke to him earlier this morning. And Neil had this to say.
All right, Neil, so yesterday that snow didn't come down perhaps as low as we thought it might do at one point.
Hold on, Ben. I've been doing this for days now. No, the forecast was exactly as it said. Nobody ever... I've been getting so many phone calls saying, it didn't snow in Douglas. No, well, the warning said 400 foot. So people need to actually learn to read. I'm sorry, we don't live in the social media age. Learn to read a full forecast.
OK, so what do you make of that? 66 13 68 166 177, or you can email studio@manxradio.com.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
But the good news is we are on air for the next half hour. So 66 13 68 is the number if you'd like to have a chat live on air. Chris is waiting to take your call. You can also text us 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. You can find us on WhatsApp as well. Let's go to some of the texts and emails though now. Texter ending 470 says, I was wondering if anyone could tell me where the cardboard recycle bins have gone from the grandstand and other recycle points around the island. No wonder there seems to be more litter lying around on the streets. So I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I've sent it down to the news team, see if we can get an answer to it. I know a lot of the civic community sites, the cardboard bins were really full, understandably, after Christmas. They always are, aren't they? But see if there's any answer to that for you. Roy has been in touch about the Lieutenant Governor, who says we pay for His Excellency at hundreds of thousands of pounds to the taxpayer, then he rides off into the sunset. These guys are here for the money, says Roy. They can spare us the excuses for moving on. We aren't stupid. How fair is that, would you say? I mean, this Lieutenant Governor, and certainly the last Lieutenant Governor as well, very active in Manx society, getting involved in a lot of things, doing charity work and whatever. And I think, it's fair to say there are not many activities or events that happen that the Lieutenant Governor or his wife aren't attending. Is that worth the money in your opinion? Des says, Happy New Year. Hope you had a good Christmas and a sober New Year. Of course it did, Des. Thank you very much indeed. Another picture of that hen harrier that Wilf mentioned first of all. But let's go back to the lines now. We're going to talk, I think, about the Lieutenant Governor with Robert. Good afternoon, Robert.
It wasn't the Lieutenant Governor, but happy Merry Christmas. I wouldn't talk about him. I respect the Lieutenant Governor.
Okay.
It's just about the government generally, and they just seem to be on a maintenance slant at the moment. They don't seem to be doing anything new other than the Laxey sewerage system, which seems to be up in the nines at the moment. So I don't know what you think about that, but I mean, they just seem to be a maintenance government at the moment.
So what do you think they should be doing then, Robert?
Well, I think they should adopt a position of getting more chat going with government. I know there's a lot hanging around with Isle of Man Bank and things like that with chatbots and stuff like that. I just think there should be an avenue whereby you can come to an answer and maybe write an email to them through that way. I think there should be more of an avenue whereby you can have an automated chat with an independent, droid or whatever on the website or on a website or something like that. I think that would really help.
Do you think
that would adopt a position whereby it would have someone to talk to. The government would have a face. I don't think it would be a voice. I think it would just be text. But I think that's something that could be adopted.
Do you think people would be happy with that idea? I know sometimes people get really upset about not being able to speak to an actual real life person. Would they go for a droid, do you think?
Some people don't want to. Some people don't want to, do they? Some people just, are so, up in the nines about not being made a fool of in the government, that they just want to talk to someone that can adopt a position whereby you have a chat with a bot and then eventually you have a chat with an email to say, well, what's the real problem? Let us know what the situation is. I think that would be a good position because Alman Bank are doing it at the moment, aren't they?
Okay, well, that's certainly an idea. Anything else, Robert, that you think might be a good thing for the government to be focusing on?
Well, I don't know. The buses would do with a makeover, really, in terms of the bus timetable. I'm stuck out on the promenade at the moment, and there's no buses coming in the past half hour. So, I think it's a bit of a poor showing bus-wise. But what can you do? They do the best they can. You just have to adopt a position where you have to put up with it, So,
do you know what would be brilliant?
Do about that.
Droids driving buses, Robert. That's what we need.
What's that?
Droids driving buses. What do you reckon?
Droids driving buses. Well, like automatic Tesla buses or something.
Yeah, we might have just solved the issue here.
I don't know. There's a few people walking around that appear to be droids in buses. They don't seem very happy. But I know what you mean. There's a few people on customer services there that could do with a bit of a pop up and have a chat with the people about how to do things. But maybe you're right. Anyway, I love you and leave you.
All right, Robert, thank you so much for calling. Good to talk to you.
Bye now.
Take care. That was Robert just talking about the government in general there. Texter ending 520 says, I'd be interested to know when in 2025 our Utilities Regulatory Authority Cura will do something about the MUA. Wholesale gas prices fell to pre-pandemic levels, says this texter, early in 2024, but we are still paying peak electricity rates 120% or more higher than pre-pandemic electricity rates. That was from B. Des says the walking will do her good, I think referring to the parking situation in Westmoreland Road. Parking, says texter ending 280. So this woman has got 500 signatures from people living around the Hillside Avenue area asking for free private parking on Hillside Avenue. It's the same as every street in Lower Douglas. She knew that when she moved there. What a waste of Tynwald's time. And I guess that is the thing sometimes, isn't it? The Isle of Man landscape has changed considerably over the past few years. We know it's a lot busier. Parking, how many cars do most families have? Parking is a real issue. So is it just one of those things that really just need to accept because that is just the way it is? Kevin H from Port Erin says Howard has the voice of common sense, thanks heavens. That is talking about Howard, who was responding to the parking issue a little bit earlier. Pat says the lady who wants the private parking outside her house had a parking space at the rear of the house but built an extension over it. OK, Pat, I don't know if that is the case. That's something we'd need to verify, but thank you very much for getting in touch. Gaz has been in touch to say recently Manx Radio published a news item in which DEFA suggested we purchase no more than 5 items of new clothing in a year to help the environment. That news item has since disappeared from the website. I'd have to have a look for that one, Gaz. In another news item, Department of Enterprise encourages us to shop locally as much as possible to help the economy. Another news item suggests that government is considering investing £2.4 million in the high street to help business. Yet the news now reports 2 more shops are closing in Douglas and Castletown. Gaz says, I'm surprised the Chamber of Commerce hasn't commented more on the disjointed messages from government. Of course, parking is tight, says texter ending 475. But this lady is specifically complaining about the increased parking burden placed on the neighbourhood by the new development. I think it's unfair to suggest she's being precious about parking spaces, as when she moved in, there was no indication there would be a massive increase in pressure on parking. Text here from B who says, my ageing brother-in-law relies on his broadband for everything. He's desperate for fibre but lives in an area of Onchan where a small number of residents and a local MHK have blocked planning applications for telegraph poles. If we could just have some sense and allow poles to be erected, then all of Onchan could get fibre as quickly as other areas, and it would also cost us much less. We don't want to have to pay our own or taxpayers' money to dig up roads and driveways unnecessarily. It is crazy blocking a much more environmental environmentally friendly solution using poles. We just don't understand it. In the UK, I understand BT is permitted to install poles where they need. Why do we have different planning laws here on island? Again, that's one we'll need to ask some questions about. Derek says, talking of parking, what's happening in Tynwald about stopping all these vans taller than 2 metres that are still parked all over our estate roads, stopping residents from parking, and we too park even hundreds of yards away from home, whilst white van men can have their cars outside their homes alongside with other people in the family's cars on the street. Worse still, says Derek, some of these people have driveways but won't use them. They'd rather upset their neighbours. The DOI and the commissioners, like here in Garth, know all about it but do nothing. I'm assuming, therefore, Derek, that you have specifically complained about this issue. Text ending 786 says, so sad to see yet another retail shop closing in Castletown. The closure of the square must be having an impact. That's referring to the gift shop there, which is going to close. I think it's towards the end of January, isn't it? Don't be silly, says Des. You can't expect people to do sensible things. I don't know what that was about, but we'll just take that as a general message, Des. Living in Tholty Will, how do we get out if the road is closed, the Sulby end for reconstruction, and the mountain is closed by snow and ice? Good point there, David. This is a text from Frank. I just wonder why the view of our lovely sea has been blocked by that terrible concrete eyesore on the prom. Did someone think that would be a good idea? James says Roy is out of order saying that. Even the Manx governor, Sir Lawrence New, left the island after his tenure finished, and he is Manx. He had to. It is not fair on the successor to hang around there. That was Roy talking about the Lieutenant Governor. We heard from him on breakfast this morning, just talking about the fact that he doesn't think he'd stay here once his tenure is over because it wouldn't be fair on his successor. Somebody else has texted in about the cardboard recycling bins, which have gone from the grandstand and the other recycle points around the island. We understand that this is about cost savings. So there is an article on the government website. It's from the 30th of October last year. And it says paper recycling bring banks will be withdrawn in a move that will save both money and increase the benefit to the environment through energy recovery at the Energy from Waste plant. As paper collected on island must be shipped to the UK for recycling, the process attracts cost in terms of collection and transportation and also has an impact on Isle of Man government carbon emissions. So the charge is being introduced because the amount of paper recovered for recycling has fallen dramatically in recent years, from 1,600 tonnes in 2007 to 200 tonnes in January 2023. I guess that's because people generally are using less paper, going more digital maybe. So that is the answer to that, and hopefully the person who texted that in is listening and can go and have a look at the government website where that full information is on there. Manx Will has been in touch to talk about the flu which is going around. We've seen reports on the BBC about hospital admissions being dramatically up on previous years with people suffering from flu. And Will says everyone needs to be really careful about this. All listeners take heed of the warning. It's not a normal flu. We had a message this morning actually from somebody talking about a flu remedy. I think it was Marie. A winter flu recipe with 60 cloves of garlic. You certainly wouldn't be able to taste anything else, Marie. But I don't know, perhaps any sort of flu remedies, but Manx Will quite concerned about the flu situation. Ian says, I think the comments regarding the current governor are harsh. Most people would agree the current governor and his wife have been the best in recent years, and I understand his reasoning that if the previous governor remains on the island, it does not allow the new incumbent a proper chance to undertake the role in the way he or she may wish. Phil's been in touch about the car parking situation. Aren't we ignoring the obvious here that there are too many cars on the island? It surprises me how little discussion there is about the car takeover and the congestion we particularly have around Douglas, to the extent that the prom is nose to tail twice a day now with people going to work and back. We have a lovely Victorian promenade, the word meaning to walk, take in the surroundings, but it's currently a car park. I mean, that is only a temporary situation, isn't it, because of the Christmas time. But prior to the Christmas car park, says Phil. I regularly saw cars parked illegally opposite the Gaieties and Frank Matcham's. There are no traffic wardens after 6 p.m, so the car drivers just ignore the rules and park there. It seems the police don't do parking fines now. Everywhere you go around central Douglas, you often see illegal parking around to and close to junctions. Give the streets back to the people and the children, not the glorious motor car, says Phil. Sue says, difficult times, but thankfully the assisted dying could help save money for Manx Care and offer our civil servants an inline inflation pay rise like the UK. We need to get this in sooner rather than later. Alan says parking should be allowed on the prom walkway all year round. The street would do better, presumably Strand Street. Would it be easier if there was parking all year round on the prom? Ted says the DOI did a Douglas parking study in 2012. It's still on their website. It evidences there was a shortage of on and off street parking. Bet no MHKs do their homework and actually use some solid evidence to speak about, says Ted. Steph says parking in housing estates on double yellows, junctions and drop curbs is a huge issue. No traffic wardens ever visit and buses often can't service Williston as it's awful there for abandoned vans and caravans. That's also the thing, isn't it? If you park up on the curb, the issue for wheelchair users or people with pushchairs is pretty significant as well. Text ending 328 said, I note the Met Office telling us to read the forecast properly. I did, and it was wrong. They stated 10 to 30 centimetres above 400 feet when there was hardly a centimetre. I don't know whether we can verify that. Certainly looking out across Douglas Bay on the hills there's quite a significant amount of snow up on the tops. Frank says, I'm sure the governor loves living on our island, although I'm sure he must be a tad tired of the smell of fresh paint and new carpet. Let's go to some of the messages that you've sent through on WhatsApp. There is currently an Isle of Man CAA consultation on ground handling services. I would encourage everyone to contribute to this to highlight these issues, says texter ending 728. Good afternoon. Regarding the baggage handlers at Ronaldsway, they are outsourced and not controlled by the airport manager. If the company providing the baggage handlers are not doing so within the contract they signed, they should be taken to task, says Pete. That was going back to Donna's phone call just about some of the delays that there have been down at Ronaldsway and not many people handling the baggage. And again, we don't know why. Maybe there was some sickness. It is that time of year as well, isn't it? Tomo says, we have little gingerbread men driving buses. As for the governor and his good lady, they get involved in everything on the island, charity or anything. Pity other governors haven't done the same in the past. Thank you very much indeed, Tomo. Lovely to hear from you. And I think Sir Richard Gosney, he was very active in the community as well. So I think we've been fairly fortunate, haven't we, in recent years with the governor. But certainly Sir John Lorimer and his wife are very heavily involved in so many things. And I think that's one thing that we really do have to say. Couldn't agree more regarding the weather forecast and social media, says Steve. People seem to get angry these days with weather forecasts. Angry if there are too many warnings, angry if there aren't enough, angry if there's snow, angry if there isn't snow. And it's usually the same people who get angry about everything else. The weird and wonderful world of social media for you. That is a good point, I think. Social media, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Brian says, does the Mannin Line censor messages, as a lot of my messages do not get aired? And if so, can you call me back and let me know the reasons why? Well, I can't talk, Brian, for messages that you've sent in previously. I think sometimes we genuinely just don't have enough time to read every single message that is sent through live on air during a programme. They are always read, though, and if there are any questions that need to be answered through them, then we do that. But I think the only time a message would need to be censored if it said something that could leave us open to not saying the right thing and doing the wrong thing there. And Nick the Skip says, I thoroughly enjoyed the pre-recorded show played last Thursday between 12 and 12:30. It was hilarious. Was that IM1, Nick? That might have been what it was. I think the best thing about IM1 is when you don't expect it to be that and you think it's the real news. If you missed it, go to the Manx Radio website in the podcast section. You can listen back to it. Howard is an absolute genius. Lewis has been involved in helping with that as well. The governor has an option to return to live here after his successor has left his post. Lawrence New returned to live here, says texter ending 068. Here is a flu remedy from Ian. 1 teaspoon of grain garlic, a teaspoon of honey, lemon and ginger. And Ian said that was a remedy that he got from a doctor. Got to love these people who measure snow. Thank you very much, Des. And why can't people be able to vote in the next general election using the online system we already have? I'm sure it would increase the number of votes cast. Certainly electronic voting, that has been something that has been talked about. I don't know, how safe would it be? Could we rely on that system? Is it something that we should be thinking about? The next general election for MHKs 2026, not too far away. We have this year, though, got the local authority elections, so that will be coming up in April. Is that something that may be on your mind? Would you think about being a commissioner? We heard on breakfast this morning from Lamara Crane, who doesn't think people are interested in being a commissioner and taking decisions for their areas. So this election in April will be, for many of the boards, their first public ballot potentially in a number of years. And Lamara Crane is hoping there will be a vote in Ramsey for the first time in 12 years and that new people stand for the other northern parishes in the spring. What do you think? Would you take on the role of a commissioner? Are you prepared to sort of stand up for your local area? We know, we were talking about social media before. We know a lot of people are very happy to go to social media and talk about things that they're not happy with. Would you put your mouth on the line and stand up for your community and take that on? It would be an interesting thought. So also thinking about increasing voter turnout. There's been a committee looking into this, as there always is after the general election in 2021, trying to look at the reasons really that people don't go out to vote. Historically, turnout hasn't been fantastic over here, although in some ways we are pretty progressive when it comes to things like giving 16-year-olds the vote. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see what the commissioner elections are looking like in April. Take away the commercial vans and motorhomes and there would be plenty of parking to go around for residents and visitors alike. You don't need to park by your office or holiday home right outside your door, says texter ending 684. Tom says, unfortunately, residence in a house does not entitle you to ownership of the road outside. By all means, increase the number of residents' parking permits, but charge the market rate for the privilege. Around £500 a month might be the going rate, and see how many takers there are. You could probably count them on one finger. Tom says, as for taking home the weekly shop, most people without a car find there's quite a good taxi service. Have a nice day. That was Tom who said that, not me. Roger says, a planning application for a new build usually requires parking spaces to be provided or evidence that there's enough parking that's suitable in the area. Westmoreland Road development was highlighted as not having enough parking, but that was to encourage alternative travel to work and the shops. Simple solution, says Roger, is to have a restriction on new owners having resident parking permits. What do you make of that one? Andy says, when are the politicians going to start paying again for their privileged parking spaces? Andrew says, regarding the parking in central Douglas, a big part of the problem is caused by commercial vehicles. In the early evening, large transit-type vehicles and vans park up, the driver gets out and is picked up and away they go until the following morning. What Douglas needs, says Andrew, is a commercial vehicle park to take all of these off our streets. Fran says, parking issues aren't just an issue in Douglas. From its junction on the Mountain Road to Leaney Road through to Queen's Drive West in Ramsey, there are nightly and weekend dumping grounds for builders, white vans and pickup trucks, and also, says Fran, DIY vans. It's a residential nightmare and a danger as it narrows the junction visibility. Some of these box vans never move as builders use them for storage, and as long as it has road tax on, nothing can be done. And finally, asked Fran, why are the pavements cracked and broken because of the bin wagons having to cut corners and drive on pavements? Jeff, who's a bus driver, just sent a message. Why are you reading out stupid comments like buses are driven by gingerbread men? To be fair, Jeff, I read that without pre-reading it first. I'm hoping it wasn't meant with any sort of insult, so apologies if it was taken in that way. Jan says, I live in Derby and travel to Ramsey by bus to get my shopping, then have to walk home with it from the bus stop. I'm sure it's just as easy if you live in Douglas. People are getting lazy, having to drive from door to door. First world problem, says Jan. And David says nobody has a God-given right to park on the street outside their property. The lady would have known that when purchasing or renting her property. I park in that area and walk into town to negate parking charges, and I will continue to do so. This is parish pump politics, which should be dealt with by the Corpy, not Tynwald. They have enough mess to address, says David. And Grumpy Bob says people should learn to hybrid travel. Central Douglas is a fantastic place for this, as there are lots of shelves within walking distance. The bus network is very good, and taxis are available routinely and quickly for longer journeys. Grumpy Bob says, I live like this. I found I save much more money than buying a car, paying insurance, paying tax, paying services. People are too stuck in the motor world. So would you be prepared to give up your car, maybe? Texter ending 068 says the road is a public place. You do not own the road in front of your house. So maybe that is what we all need to be thinking about. You own the property, perhaps, inside, but the space outside is not designated to be yours. Steve says the disc parking area should be 24-hour, not restricted to daytime only. I guess the issue then, Steve, is who polices that? How do you make sure that it's something that is adhered to? We think the comment, incidentally, about the gingerbread man is because our own Ben Cunningham, who works here at Manx Radio, is a bus driver. And I think that's where that comment came from, Jeff. So it wasn't meant in any way as an insult, but I think there was a little bit of a friendship there between those two. And more pictures of this incredible leucistic hen harrier, which was way back at the start of the programme. Wilf got in touch to say that he had seen one and was wondering what it was. He didn't know what it was, but so many of you have been in touch, and we've got some wonderful pictures. And Peter Christian is incredible, and he has taken some amazing photographs which have been shared with us, and we will pop those onto our social media pages. But if you are up around the Derby area and manage to spot this, honestly, it's quite a sight. There is a wonderful photograph as well of the hen harrier with a kestrel. Honestly, to get something like that on camera would be absolutely phenomenal. That is pretty much all for today. Thank you very much indeed for all your comments. I've got through most of them. There are a couple of late emails and text messages that have just come in. If there's anything I need to talk about on tomorrow's programme, we'll hang those on over to tomorrow. But as ever, you can always get in touch with us out of hours as well. 682 631 is the number to call. You can just leave a message on there, or perhaps you have got a question about something that you want us to investigate. We can pass that on to the news team. Then please do that. Coming up next on Manx Radio, it's 1 to 3 with Christy D. Alex will follow that with the afternoon show, the first of 2025. I still can't quite get used to saying 2025. I haven't had to write it down yet, but I'm sure it's going to take a little while. And then I will be back at 5 with updates. So whatever you're doing this afternoon, have a good one. Do head over to the Manx Radio website, incidentally. We've made some news predictions for 2025. Siobhan has been taking a look at the things that have been promised for this year, and then we can have a look at this time next year and see how many of them have come true. But whatever you're doing for the rest of your afternoon, thank you very much indeed for your company this lunchtime. I'll be sitting in again for Andy tomorrow. As I say, he's just on holiday for a couple of weeks, so look forward to talking to you then. Thank you very much to Chris Quirk for being on the phones for today's programme, and I'll talk to you again later.